afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this RRECQ lunchtime webinar. Thank you for joining us today, whether you're joining from university, a research lab, government, industry, we're glad to have you with us. Bonjour et bienvenue tout le monde. Le webinaire aujourd'hui se déroulera en anglais, mais vous pourrez quand même activer la transcription en direct en français et poser les questions dans le chat Q&R, questions et réponses dans n'importe quelle langue. My name is Andrew Henderson. I'm a professor here at ETS, one of the 4 institutions supporting the RRECQ. I'm also the co-titular of Acts 3 of that research network, and it's my pleasure to be here today. Before we begin, we'd like to know where you're joining from. So while we get started, the moderators will start a quick poll to ask you a question about your location. While we do that, we will have time at the end of the webinar for questions. You can submit them while the presentation is going on in the Q&A box. Also, during the webinar, the speakers may share some links, and these will be available in the post-event email and on the website, the RRECQ's website. The webinar is being recorded and will be posted later on the RRECQ YouTube channel. A little note about upcoming RRECQ events. We have an upcoming webinar on June 11th featuring SureFast, who will be discussing place-based economic stewardship and regenerative investment. And the network RRECQ will be present at the ACFAS conference May 12th to 15th in Trois-Rivières. We're co-organizing 3 seminars, 613, 614, and 620, which will touch on bridges between research and end users, social sciences and humanities, and Global South, Global North interchange. So please, we hope to see you there, and please come talk to us. You can find more details at the website that's just been posted, and also on the ACFAS website at acfas.ca. And now, most importantly, today's webinar about the product as a service model. It's gaining traction as a concrete lever for circular economy, yet is still unused and underused in many sectors. Today, we have 2 excellent speakers from HP Canada who will walk us through their experience with the model, looking at measurable environmental impacts, lifecycle management of equipment, and the benefits, organizational and economic, that they have observed. First, I'll introduce Frances Edmonds, HP Canada's Head of Sustainable Impact. She sits on the federal government's Sustainability Development and Advisory Council. She's contributed to the expert panel on the circular economy in Canada as part of the Council of Canadian Academies, and you may have seen her at TEDx and other places. Pascale Gontier is Senior Manager of Global Services and Solutions at HP Canada. She leads the design and delivery of managed service and software solutions for enterprise clients across the country. They both bring deep expertise across the full hardware, software, and services lifecycle. So, Frances, Pascale, welcome. Thank you for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and hello, everybody. Delighted to be here. Just full screen this. So I'll jump right in. Obviously, we will take questions in the Q&A, and both Pascale and I will work to answer them as we go. And of course, if we have any remaining questions, we will endeavor to answer them after the webcast as well. So here's what we're trying to cover today. Make sure that you understand by the time you leave. And to get us started, you would normally in Canada start with a land acknowledgement. Given that many of us are calling from across the country and even Europe, I saw, I'm going to just focus a little on what is the responsibility of businesses under the Truth and Reconciliation Report, which was written about a decade ago. And truthfully, we've had very little action taken on this. And I just wanted to point out that every business has a responsibility. And here you can see the 3 main areas after having adopted UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which I can tell you HP has adopted into our global human rights policy. So here you have it. Every business should be doing something, and I thought I would share just very quickly with you some of the actions that HP has taken to address our reconciliation work. We've focused very heavily on education and then support at the local level through the power of technology and helping kids learn basic literacy through volunteers reading with the youth in the far north, which is a pretty cool volunteer activity. We work with other agencies as well to deliver technology into the hands of Indigenous youth. Excuse me. And the most recent thing we've done is this thing called the Indigenous Pricing Initiative, launched late last year. And this was in recognition of the fact of how public procurement gets done in Canada. If you're a broader public sector organization like a school, a library, or a hospital, traditionally you have gotten together with many other broader public sector organizations and purchased in bulk, which gives you access to discounted pricing. However, historically, Indigenous schools, hospitals, libraries have been excluded from this discounted pricing. And so a group of people who are already suffering from a digital divide now also have an extra digital divide. So HP decided to fix that late last year. So any Indigenous organization can purchase just one item and receive our best discounted pricing. And that's reconciliation in action. And I'd encourage you to all think about what are the different ways that you can make an impact on reconciliation. So we mentioned earlier that I was part of the expert panel on the circular economy in Canada, and this was the one-page summary of the very lengthy report, so I'll spare you having to read it. But obviously we can see here incorporating circular principles into public procurement criteria, and I don't know how many of you are from public organizations versus private sector, but I would argue it should be for both. And that was the top recommendation. And let's just have a think about why that would be. So this is one of my favorite quotes about sustainable or circular procurement, and I'll let you just read that. So we're talking about innovation in the way we buy and what we buy. And that's what we're here to talk about today. And this is from Sam Hummel, former CEO of the SPLC. So I'm going to jump right into it with some LCA data, because I know we have some LCA experts, life cycle assessment, for those of you who don't know what that is. And let me just explain what you're seeing here. So we have people, their full-time job is doing LCA at HP. We've been using it as a tool for decades to help us improve our carbon and other impacts around the globe. And this was even surprising to us. What you're seeing here is a comparison between buying a PC or accessing the service of a PC, same compute power, versus the two different methods of accessing that compute power. And even we were surprised to see that across all of the criteria that you would measure in an LCA, and obviously this was all done to ISO standards and independently peer-reviewed, you see a significant reduction across all categories. And that is not intuitive, and that's really the basis of what we're going to be talking about here today. You can see the link here to go and look at the white paper where we looked at print as a service too, slightly less impressive results, and then obviously the other one is our instant ink service. So you can see all three there. So when we think about the expert panel's recommendations for businesses, what are the things that we should be doing as a business? So implementing circular business models, and I'm going to show you what that looks like from HP's perspective. Contributing to standards for circular products, absolutely. We're going to be doing a lot of work on that, whether it's how do you assure that circular materials really are incorporated into your products or not. Partnerships like the one we have here, where we're trying to get the message out to change the ecosystem around us. And obviously investing in refurbishing and R&D is something we do a lot of. So the expert panel's results were Canada is just 6.1% circular, and you've probably all seen this already. If we don't do something differently, we'll have a 40% increase in all the things we don't want. So let's jump into how HP is responding to this. So as a purpose-driven company, you see here our founding fathers, 80 plus years ago in the garage that the company was formed in. And they said, somewhat heretically in those days, that the real reason we're here is to make a difference. Yes, we have to make a profit to stay in business, but we're really here to make a difference. And so that's the backdrop for how we are able to make the claim we're Canada's most sustainable technology company, a whole bunch of proof points on here, including being listed by Canada's own Corporate Knights as one of the top 100 most sustainable corporations worldwide. So this is what you see today from HP is what leadership looks like. And I'd encourage you to be thinking about, as you do business with other organizations, what are they doing to step up to the plate and lead, particularly in Canada? Now let's talk about the scale of HP's goal. You heard Canada is just 6.1% circular after decades of investment in recycling and all the other things we do. HP has a similar level of investment in recycling and much more advanced on this. And so we had set ourselves a goal to be 75% circular by 2030. Today, we're declaring a 43% circularity rate. I'm very public on how we do those calculations. But most people have no concept of what that looks like. So I asked my engineers for a picture, and here's what they came up with. This is the largest sea container ship in the world, the one that got stuck in the Suez Canal during the pandemic. And our engineers estimate that by 2030, our global production would be the equivalent of 2 of these ships full of HP product. So you can imagine how big that is. So to get to 75% circularity, we need to be producing by 2030 1.5 of these ships full of HP product and packaging made entirely from recycled materials. That's 4 years to go from a 43% rate right now. And the question to you is this possible? And I would argue it is. We know it's theoretically possible, but we need our customers to come along with us on this for a whole bunch of reasons. So just a little update on some of the work that we have been doing to get us to that 43% circularity rate. You can see a wide range of materials that we're taking into a circular model. And the latest one is actually this copper one that we just announced just this year. And you can see here, importantly, that we've actually certified that this copper is circular. Now, we're here to talk about device or managed services. And what you might not know is that HP does a lot of this around the world, just not so much in Canada on the PC side of the house. We've done a lot of work on managed print. That's kind of a standard thing. And I do have one of my colleagues here if we have questions about print, but I'm not focusing on that today. So you can see here that we do it. We see a high degree of user satisfaction and a very significant reduction, in my mind, in tickets that your own employees might be submitting. And we can't really have this conversation without talking about what's going on in global supply chains today, and particularly in tech procurement. I would argue that whilst tech is the poster child for circular procurement, we also have economic conditions today that are unique to the tech industry with the chip shortages that we have. All of the chips are basically being put into data centers to power the AI revolution. We've got very steeply rising commodity prices, and that's leading to a very limited range of products and product availability generally. Now, some of you might say the sky is falling. What I say is this makes a perfect opportunity for us in sustainability to actually think about that Sam Hummel quote of we should be doing things differently and necessity becoming the mother of invention. Excuse me. So if we think about this 100 billion tons of material that we dig out of the ground every year to make the things that are around us and including our products, what's the impact of that? And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here that 70% of GHGs and a very high percentage of biodiversity loss and water stress is really caused by digging material out of the ground, handling it and using it. And that comes from the Circularity Gap report. And so, back to that Sam Hummel quote, we're trying to think about how we do things differently. And product design is the kicker for this, and the radical collaboration as we are doing today. How can we collaborate to advance this? And only then do we get to the thing that most Canadians feel is going to save the planet, which is that reverse cycle. So there are 5 business models of circularity, and this is courtesy of the Circular Innovation Council. And I just want to walk through them very quickly so you can understand as a business, how do we approach this? The first one is to make sure that your products are manufactured using renewable energy, increasingly a big focus for most of the tech companies, including HP, and that you have circular materials as you build your products. I'm going to ask you a quick question. Obviously, you can't answer because we're in a webinar format, but would you imagine that I have any customers in Canada anywhere asking me for a higher percentage of recycled post-consumer recycled plastics in my products and is willing to pay for it? And the answer is not a single customer in Canada, not one, including Environment and Climate Change Canada. The next thing after this is to be able to offer as a service and to buy as a service. That is the single biggest thing you can do to advance the circular economy. And as you saw through the LCA data I gave you, but for many, many other reasons, moving to buying as a service is a particularly important thing to do. Part of that is that product life extension, and I'm going to show you some data in a moment. Sharing platforms, we're all familiar with that, getting the maximum usage, and only then do we get to this resource recovery. But resource recovery requires design at the front end so that products can be separated and the important pieces either reused or recycled properly. So it's a design question as well. So this is HP's plan, a strategy on a page. How are we going to do this? As I said, starting with design, and it's very important to us that design is done well, and all the way through the product life cycle, thinking about these things. Now, if we use carbon as a proxy for where the impacts are in the typical products that a tech company would sell, you can see here on the left-hand side for a typical notebook computer, and this comes from TCO, not an HP number, you can see nearly 80% of the impact of a typical notebook computer comes from the manufacturing of it. And so hence you can see, if you add 2 years of use to an average PC, you'll reduce its carbon footprint by 30%. And that really goes back to that initial LCA that I showed you, which was, why does buying as a service actually lower the impacts? And the main reason for that is, today, when people buy technology like an average notebook, they do not think about what's going to happen to it when it reaches the end of its first life. And we all know they have an end of first life. And increasingly, if you think about how do we buy today in today's chip shortage and product shortage world, we should be buying products that have a longer lifespan, that can be repaired, that can be upgraded. And in also doing that, we decrease the carbon footprint. Wow, this is pretty cool. So we're responding to an economic market disruption with a sustainability win. What's not better than that? If we're talking about a server, the particularly important thing is the use phase, because they tend to be used for longer, and it's how you run the server, what energy is powering the data center, and is it programmed to run efficiently, not overloaded, not underloaded. And in the case of a printer, it's really the paper usage that you need to be thinking about. So the other piece that HP has been able to do, because of our depth of experience and work that we've done in LCA and providing carbon data to customers, is actually to also be able to offer what would traditionally been carbon neutral. Now it's called carbon emission sinks, to meet with the European Union's anti-greenwashing legislation, I guess you would call it. So we have invested heavily in making sure we can provide a well-resourced, researched, and risk-free, as far as it can be, offset program for you. And just going back to that printer, what most people don't realize is once you've dealt with how you reduce the amount of paper you're using, simple things like printing on both sides of the page, it's really then getting the cartridges back to us so that we can put them through our circular plastics programs and get the materials and resources back out of them. And of course, we offer free recycling, so we should be getting them all back. So let's just go a little deeper into the carbon elements of a typical notebook computer. Here you can see it's an EliteBook 840. And I just wanted to sort of dive deep into this piece of what are the elements in there that we want to make sure we get the maximum usage out of them, because they're very heavily carbon intensive. And you can see here the drive, the main board, and the display, the three areas that we want to focus in on. I have some other colleagues who work in sustainable procurement, and they worry about packaging. Packaging is almost irrelevant when we're talking about these products. Yes, we need to do something better with it. And for the record, HP's packaging has I think 99%, put me on that, either from recycled or certified sources. So we've done all of the work that we can do to focus on that. But really now, how do we get the maximum life out of these very carbon intensive components? So let's turn it now to be looking at circular or sustainable procurement. And I would say in the 8 years that I've been working on trying to change the way Canada buys, this has been one of the hardest things to get across to people, that yes, we're still looking for best value when we're buying with circularity in mind, but now we need to think about three things. The best and most sustainable services and goods, and I've obviously flipped that because in the circular economy, it's all about services over goods, from the best and most sustainable suppliers. And this is important. People who start down this journey typically just default straight away to product. They don't think about supplier. But we're in a carbon constrained world, if you just pick carbon as an example. Where's the biggest impact? It's on how you make the supplier go after these things. And anybody can have a hero product. We need all products to be hero products, all services. And also in alignment with your own organization's stated purpose and goals, which almost never gets included in procurement criteria. So I've put some examples here aligned to those business models that we talked about. I'm not going to go through those in detail because we do have a short time together today. But you have some examples, and I'm going to show you where you can get more detailed questions and model answers so that you don't have to do the hard work here on tech circular procurement. But lots of opportunity here, and it's not complicated really. We just need to get started. So I did want to point out that we have a new white paper. It was issued late last year, authored by BCIT and Circular Economy Leadership Council. HP funded it. It is available in French too. And this is a wonderful document. It has not just tech as an example, but a wide variety of product categories that you could be buying as a service. I've put the sort of generic index of the white paper here for you to have a look at. I would argue personally, because I'm an impatient person and I feel we've been talking about this long enough, going about this in a traditional systematized procurement way is not fast enough. We've got really 3 or 4 years to get carbon emissions down significantly. We need to move pretty quick on this. So we need to walk and chew gum at the same time. And I would argue that we can do that because we need to. HP has its own guidance, of course, the Guide to Sustainable IT Procurement that I wrote. It's available in French and English, as are the criteria for procurement. One of the things HP has also done, and I'll just leave you with this quote, that you cannot be sustainable if you're not transparent. And that's a double negative, but we have invested heavily to make our sustainability information at the SKU level, at the product level, to customers. So you can go to this website and select your product, excuse me, and it will tell you, does this product have ocean-bound plastics in it? What eco-labels does it have? And it's all there for you to have a look at and compare. So that's not an insignificant expense for us to do. As you can imagine, it takes a lot of time and effort to keep that up to date, but we're very proud of this work. And if there's something that you're looking for and it's not there, let me know and we will get that fixed. Okay, and I'm going to hand over to Pascal.
Thank you, Frances. Appreciate that. I'm going to start with answering maybe the elephant in the room. With a name like Pascal Gontier, do I not speak French? La réponse est oui, je parle français, je suis franco-ontarienne. Mes parents sont québécois, ma mère québécoise, mon père est québécois par contre du côté anglais. Donc, j'étais élevée bilingue ici à Toronto. Je fais plusieurs présentations, mais surtout en anglais, sinon presque exclusivement en anglais. Donc, je vais continuer en anglais, mais je voulais juste vous laisser savoir que je peux répondre aux questions, on peut avoir une discussion plus personnelle, si vous voulez, en français. Okay. I'm starting with the quote, just similar to like Frances did about our founders, because I do believe the culture sets the mindset of the employees. And thankfully, we have Francis in Canada that can be our conscious, can be the reminder of making sure this is a leading value prop that HP has to offer, because even in our everyday, although we're with HP, I've been with HP since 1997, and I would have forgotten this message if it's not for Francis, if it's not for our core culture that makes it a priority consistently. So we see the world differently. So it starts with that. And then it continues with the responsibilities of us as individuals, for us to take the time to learn it, take the time to socialize it with our customers. And even if we have to be, I don't want to say tricky, but if we have to get in the messaging and get the impacts, even though it might just be a dollar and value, it might be more of a financial play, it might be a total cost of ownership. In the end, we're getting and making impacts, even if that wasn't the primary purpose why the customer came to us. Before we go to the next slide, I'm just going to ask you a question. I'm assuming everybody here, is going to be a rhetorical question because we can't really engage, but I suspect everybody must have a laptop or maybe even a desktop that's personal, and perhaps even an HP printer that you use. How often do you refresh your devices? I know for me, I still have my ZBook from 15 years ago. I don't have to replace it. It works very well. It serves my purpose. The memory range is fine. The video card is great. So I haven't had to replace it. Same thing with my printer. I don't use it very often, so the life of the extension is great. And that's on a personal level. And we probably do that type of decision on a personal basis every day. But when we take it to scale and we look at it from a global perspective, or even just from a company perspective, regrettably, we don't think that way. So we'll go to the next slide. Francis, thank you for supporting my presentation. Okay. But what we do find is that we still have the same conversations with our customers. They might come to us with an RFP. They might come to us with, hey, I have all this money I need to spend before the end of March. They might come to us with a need, not necessarily wanting a solution. And I'm talking about not just sustainability solution, but a solution for how they work, meeting their employees, the satisfaction of their work productivity, the importance of which they're using their devices, and that it's eligible, and sorry, not eligible, available and working when they need it. So that's typically what they come to us with. So the mindset is really one of, can you meet my requirements? Can you meet my budget? Can you turn this around very quickly? And if I have a problem, will you be able to fix it? And then obviously there's costs. Like I said, I only have this amount of money, and typically we work with procurement. So the requirements of how we respond to RFPs or even requests for quotes has to be within a standard template. Here's all the type of products we want. You tell me what your price is, so that they can compare us against all of our competitors. There's no column for sustainability. There's no column for any sort of outside of the box thinking. It is strictly a play on cost. And that's hard for us to be able to value prop ourselves if it's not even within the template for us to utilize. We will include it in our communications, in our proposals, but it's not used as a measuring stick as to who they're going to choose to go with. Almost 100% of the time, it's not. So Francis did say there's not many customers that come to us with that. And from our perspective, from what my team works on, I would agree with that. It is not a standard. In fact, it's probably not even a consideration when we're negotiating. And then the other component is they think that we're going to either be more expensive if we do play that sustainability and show them the value that we have and how committed we are as a company, how much we've invested in the circular economy for our own products. They're worried about, okay, well, now I'm going to have to pay more for the same product. And how is that going to benefit my user? Are they going to get a lesser quality product because it's not, they're worried about the quality of the product, the quality of the manufacturing. So there's concerns about that. They're concerned that they're going to have to forego functionality in order to support sustainability. So we see those type of conversations as well. So we have to think about it in a different way when we position it so we have to help our customers think differently. We have to help them get to thinking as a sustainable leader, where they're going to define buying, not necessarily at the lowest cost, but looking at it as a system, looking at it as a solution, a service that takes everything into play and it becomes a system. So system design thinking, if you will. We need to help them get there. And typically we try to do that by a couple things. So I'll just stay on this slide for a couple more minutes. We try to do that by using behavior, right? Like thinking about a time that we need to make a change. And typically as persons, if we go back to the I, we make a change either because we're financially required to make a change. Either the pain is too big or too hard for us to stay status quo, or there's a reward if we make a change. So we try to utilize a little bit of those three to either focus on the pain points they have or focus on the savings that they will receive as well. And so that we can position our services and our managed solutions. So we'll go to the next slide. What does that look like? How do we do that? I have solution architects within my group, and one solution architect focuses on print services, the whole managed service, and I have one that focuses on personal systems, so device, notebooks, workstations, thin clients, etc. So they will start with a solution. They're going to look at the customer's total environment and ask some key questions. And it starts from, assuming they bought HP, right? It starts from the experience when they first touched their product. So from a user experience, what type of experience do they want their user to have? And how can we then position some services that also support our values? So in the deployment perspective, so the far left, you'll see deployment. We're looking at how can we minimize the amount of times that this device needs to be touched. So at manufacturing, what can we do in manufacturing to add some customization, some logos, some labeling, anything that the customer would do on site, let us do it in our factory service. So that when we are done with that configuration, we put it in a box and we can ship it to somebody who might work remotely, or we can ship them in multiple boxes, one box with multiple devices, and send it directly to one site. So we minimize the touch points. We optimize the experience. They open up their PC, they have their recycling packaging, they put that away. They open up their computer, they have their instructions on how to get started, and they're productive within 45 minutes. That's the target. So that's one thing. And how does that help us? Well, it helps us because now we have a good experience with our product. So there is no question as to, did we buy a sustainable product or did we just buy a good product, right? Right off the bat, their experience is great. We're also looking at provisioning in terms of what's the cost of shipping, what's the cost of, or the impact from an environmental perspective. But we're also wanting the customer to have an a good, I'll say again, I guess I'm repeating myself, but a good experience with their product, with HP. And then the next component of the life cycle is service. So they might be utilizing their device and they have no problems. So the service component of it is also very important. How long can we service our computers? I would say up to 7 years in a commercial and enterprise environment, right? Can we extend that? Sure. But it is at the cost of the customer to make sure that they have coverage. And we offer service extension coverages so that we can continue and expand in service. Does that make HP happy? It makes us happy that they're still with HP. Would we love to sell them more computers? Of course we would, but we want to make sure that they buy the computers they need. So we have that software perspective on it with fleet management. So which of our devices are no longer serving the user's experience? If they need high memory, if they need a good video card, and we're seeing within our software that we sell and we manage that they are not getting the right experience, their names will bubble to the top. And whether we're managing it on behalf of the customer or the customer is managing it themselves, they can see which end users might not be getting a great experience. We can also do predictive repairs without the end user even knowing that they were going to get they have a problem, update their BIOS. Maybe there was a virus. I know when we moved to Win 11, there was a lot of issues with Teams. And so that was something that needed to be pushed down. And as HP employees, we are on this, right? So we don't get a new laptop just because it's been 3 years. We get it when it's broken and it hasn't been able to be fixed. So we definitely live through this environment. So our software is a big deal because it also provides us the capability to do preventative maintenance. It highlights any battery issues so that we can switch a battery versus having to switch the entire device. We don't have to ship back and forth. We don't have to drive over to the site and repair it. We're saving all of that extra manual touch. by being proactive with a software perspective. And then, of course, when they're done with their devices, whether it's somebody's leaving the company and we just want to put their laptop in storage, or they're done with the printer, the device, and need it to recycle. So we have options. So again, these are all services that we modulize and we put into one experience for the customer. So they pick and choose how they want to work with their device and how they want it to live throughout the cycle of their engagement with us. So repurposing is huge. Our partner program is amazing in terms of recycling. We can repurpose. They can even buy it from us for $1 if it's been leased, and then they can choose to donate it to their local charities. So there's options as to how they're going to repurpose. It doesn't have to be a straight recycling play. And then, as I mentioned, the managed component is that we are a partner with them. We can do whatever services they've chosen throughout those modulars. We would execute on that. We would hold them accountable to it because we have reports. We can share with them how they're doing well in a eco-friendly report format for their printers, as well as energy utilization, perhaps even for their devices, etc. So we can provide them the information they need to reinstill the message internally within their corporation of not only do we have a great product, we're also making a great difference. And here's some of the reports that can prove what we've done. And then we bundle it up contractually. So we can fix their prices for 5 years. So there's some continuity and they know what they're getting. We can refresh as we go along. We can lease it if they don't want to have the upfront costs. They can purchase it, but only have the services as a contract. I mean, there's many, many ways. We can bill centrally. We can bill globally. Again, it provides them less things to have to focus on IT and just do the work that their company is paid to do and focus on their customers. So I'll go to the next slide. Thank you, Francis. So from an end user perspective, I did mention that it is all about the end user experience. I think we want to do good. And, I mean, we're not perfect, but as long as it's not too hard, like sometimes we all want to have both. We want to do good. We want to be able to feel good about our decisions. We want to be able to champion. And really, we do focus on end user. As a company, we focus on making sure that we onboard them and it's personalized, that they have convenient delivery of their products, that they have minimum packaging, effortless onboarding, that they can do interrupted work. If they have any issues, we will be able to predetermine those and fix their device as long as they're logged into their network. We can lock the computers if they feel if they think that they've been stolen. We can GPS track them so that we don't have to replace ones that have been misplaced. We can also find out where one might be if it's missing and it's just sitting at somebody's home office, not realizing where it has been. As long as it's been powered on, we can then track it. And so we have some security built in and fast repairs. Ours are serviceable, repairable. Like I said, I still have one military spec. You can drop it and most of it will work as well. So we've built some really high qualities to minimize the amount of repairs that we need, but we're there if we need to repair. So from an end user perspective, they're happy. So the next benefit would be from a corporate perspective. So the next slide, we look at more, why as a company would I want to do this? And I've touched on a few of them, so it might be a little bit repetitive, but it does warrant the time that we have, by optimizing our logistics and having fewer touch points, we lower the transportation emissions, right? We reduce the packaging waste as well, and we simplify our operations. So everything that Francis already told about how we build our computers, the materials we use, that's all great. I'm not really involved in there. I just know it's a very powerful message. I'm looking at it from the time that we ship it out. And so that way we want to make sure that we streamline what we can, we configure what we can, we reduce the packaging, we reduce the touch points. And then of course we want to extend the life by what I mentioned, some of the software. Well, we already have a great quality product, but we can also put in proactively. So we're getting into a shortage. We'll use an example. We're getting into a shortage with memories. We can use our software to identify which of the fleet is high memory usage. So which personas do we need to go to and say, hey, you might need to switch, but everybody else, you're good to go. So we're not going to invest and we're not pay double the price for a memory chip just because we're in a shortage. We're going to continue utilizing, and you most likely will not feel a difference because based on our utilization metrics, you're not using too much memory. So extending the device life is wonderful, and it also optimizes the length of your return on investment. So it'd be great to be able to use one device for a longer period of time with with the fleet management being done either in company or remotely from HP. And again, we can repair and deploy over replacing. So if we look even back 5 years, even perhaps, I'll say 5 years, you would literally have to put your device in a box that we would send UPS, and you would ship your device and it would get fixed and then it would be returned. So what do you do in those 3 days, right? So if you don't have an on-site repair, you're going to have to ship your product out. So we're about preventative maintenance. We're about remediation. We're about monitoring the service of our devices to reduce that requirement for you to be ever without your PC. And that same goes with printers. I know we're focusing on PCs, but we've been living managed print services and print for quite a few years. It is a mature business and it works well, but it's a printer. You don't take your printer home with you every day. You don't bring it to the cafe to do some work. So nobody really cares too much about a printer, but we've been doing it for printers with high success. And we'd love to be able to break the nut here and have that same experience for managed devices. And ultimately, secure and responsible end-of-life disposition. Like I mentioned before, there's more than one ways to repurpose and give life to your device. Again, extending your ROI. So these are just 2 quick examples. And I used one as print, and I'm using one that was personal systems. And I wanted to mention that we even have challenges having customers agree to share their stories. And that's another thing. Like we have some other, and so my bank of examples is down to, for managed devices, is really down to 1 or 2. Only because sometimes it's a competitive advantage that they might have, or they just don't have the time, they don't see the value, etc. And we do not compensate for narratives and for stories and for case studies with customers either. But I do want to highlight these 2. The US Bank and actually Bank of America would be another one in the same print environment. Financial industries like to print. And so they started off with just wanting to simplify their print environment. And security is huge in the banks, obviously in the hospitals and financial industries, insurance, etc. And they said increase our sustainability, almost like an afterthought, but it was there. So we're going to keep that in there. And over the course of, I would say a year, when they can do it on their own, they can run their own eco reportings. And they found that they were able to reduce, over 34 million sheets of paper and print through a combination of duplexing, secure print. So don't release the print unless I'm tapping on the printer to reduce the print, or they move to digitalizing their scanning. So instead of printing, they're scanning. And they're also able to recycle and collect over 12,000 printers. So great stories there, and they continue on utilizing that as a narrative on their issue, not their issues, on their values, how they replicate that. And then we have Backert, who they came in a little bit more with, I want to do good, but it still wasn't part of the requirement list. But they had high ambitions, as they mentioned here. We wanted to collaborate to make a difference, both on scalability. So whatever we did here, it had to be global, because they were they had quite the outreach. So it had to be global. It had to include good delivery. It had to make sense from a total cost of ownership. And we had to have solid end-of-life device handling. So they were always an HP customer, but they were transactional. They would buy it, and then that was it, right? So we went from transactional and creating what I went through in a previous slide. We picked all of these services that we think would be an assistance. We were able to simplify them. So instead of having dozens of different types of devices they can buy, down to 4 based on their personas. So now managing a fleet of 4 different models is much easier than trying to manage a fleet of 15 different products. So the BIOSes, everything that supports the device now is reduced to a family of 4 different models. And they also decided that we would do all the onboarding, all the configuration. So we removed hours of work from their IT department so they can focus on being IT in their manufacturing on the floors. So increasing their focusing on that area. So we didn't remove any staff. We just allowed them to be reallocated or refocused on the areas that had the most impact in the areas that they care for, which was operations in the manufacturing floor. And they also leased and returned many of their HP. So the ones that they had purchased from us, they did sanitization of their devices through one of our services. So we made sure that there was no proprietary issues or anything like that, brought it back to its factory default, and then they were able to donate it to a local charity of their choice. So those are two little examples. And with that, I think, yeah, we're up to, let's have a talk about it. I think there's some questions perhaps. If there's not, open to making some questions up and answering them on the fly.
Thank you,
Thank you for your
Pascal. So I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A yet. I know we have a good size audience, so please feel free to ask anything that you have questions about.
There are a couple actually in the Q&A. And I'll just read this one if you don't see it. When did you begin the transition to as a service, and is there still improvement to do on your model? How is it evolving over time?
Now, I can take one perspective, and Francis is going to have another perspective, I'm sure. And Stéphane also, I know he's on the phone, so I don't want to put him on the spot, but he's a district sales manager in Quebec for the East, actually. So he can probably step in if you'd like to add something, Stéphane. I will be in this particular role just for 6 months. However, I've been with HP since '97. And what I've seen is managed print service as a service has been as part of our life at least since the late 90s. Okay. But our device as a service, HP has invested locally in Canada to build my team, actually, the solution architect, and we have a service specialist where we're championing this type of service. That's our job. That's their job. Their full-time job is to look and find out how can we build this message and sell, even if we have to sell it through our channel or in partnership with our channel, we are focused on that. So it's still newer focus as a device for Canada.
I think I should jump in there and just talk about WXP a little, because you didn't actually use the phrase WXP, which is the name of our software, which Pascal actually showed in her diagram there. I think with the advent of WXP to be a very powerful management tool that is brand agnostic, it can show you a multi-brand environment of PCs. Let's say, we talk about security, we talk about sustainability, we talk about operational issues. This really is the icing on the cake in my mind that helps us look at how do we practice this device longevity piece, because we can see where somebody's using a computer and it's struggling to keep up with their workload. We can see whether it needs a new battery. All of those things can be seen and managed centrally now. So it's almost magic to be able to do this. And this really augments what we're trying to do here in transitioning from selling boxes to selling services.
Right.
And if I can actually build on that as well, the other advantage is that once you're a managed service customer, we can just keep adding, right? So the WXP platform that Francis mentioned can do printers, could do personal systems, doesn't have to be HPs. You could have Dell, Lenovo, right? But we can build, and so that the experience, the solution enables scalability.
Great. Thank you very much. A good implementation question here. What are the keys to keep in mind to convince an industry, and you could perhaps address many industries, but to convince someone else to adopt a product as a service model?
Well, I'll jump in, and I know Pascal will have some things here, but at the very front end today, we already mentioned we've got product shortages, we've got prices going through the roof. And Pascal mentioned when you enter into a device as a service, you're on a fixed contract, right? Your prices are stable. And most businesses like stability, right? That's most organizations like stability. So that's a very big selling point today. And I think really we'll go back to that quote from Sam Hummel: unless we innovate what we buy and how we buy, we're just going to keep reproducing the same thing. So there's this call to action of we really got to do things differently. And so how might you do that differently? And certainly I think Pascal alluded to this, when you see, by the time you get to an RFP that's on the street, it's too late, right? Because everything is set in this box that we can't even respond to with, hey, wouldn't you like to buy this as a service? Because you've already said you want to buy boxes, right? So I think having that conversation earlier with the buying department, plus the IT, plus the procurement people, and hopefully some sustainability people at the table, like, it's that conversation to have at the very front end of, could we do something differently? And then what might that look like?
Yeah, I think you worded it quite nicely. I wouldn't have, I mean, other than the responsibility of ourselves and everybody who talks to a customer, the more we talk about it, somebody says you have to repeat it 7 times before they'll realize what you're actually trying to communicate. So the more we repeat it, you know, hopefully the next generation of buyers, you know, et cetera, will start making it as part of their normal vernacular.
And let's not forget, everybody buys tech. This is not a unique category that only a few people buy. And that's partly why I talk about it being the poster child for circular procurement, because people do buy it. They have, you know, usually a 3-year cycle for when they're going to update their PC function, but are often buying in between as well. And perhaps one thing we didn't talk about was that when you have as a service, you can scale that fleet up or down depending on the size of your workforce as well. So that you're not buying, and this is typical in many public sector, they have money now, so they buy a whole swath of things and they sit on a shelf and they age out, right? And that's just pure waste, utter waste, right? So, and we do see that quite often. So the ability to scale up or down as your population size increases or decreases is a key component here of reducing that impact.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Our next question is about the sort of level of circularity. We still have waste exiting the loop. You've talked about some of the different end-of-life options and how the service model probably diverts a lot of waste that would have otherwise directly gone to waste. But can you talk a little bit about how, and we can all read about the circularity metrics, but how this particular model is affecting circularity? And I will add a sub question of mine, which is, can you tell us a little bit about discussions you've had with the designers about end of life and how productive or not those have been?
Well, let's start with the fact that HP's had a formal design for the environment program since 1992. So we've been thinking about this a long time. And as I said, we've been doing take back and recycling for well over 30 years. So we have some experience in the volume that you can be getting back, and then what could and should you be doing it globally. And of course, I helped implement the EPR programs across the country, including in Quebec, as a basic stopgap. But we actually want our products back because we know how to recycle them well. And we could see, we have been investing actually in Quebec at a circular plastics plant called the Laverne group. We've been working with them for more than 2 decades now in making plastics circular. And, you know, what was the interesting thing there was, you know, it took us 7 years to get the first plastics chemistry off the ground and fully circular. And when we did the plastics chemistry piece, we did our little happy dance and said, yay, this is really great. Hey, we've cracked the nut, you know, crack open the champagne. Then we take it to our contract manufacturers in Southeast Asia, and in this case, it was for making inkjet cartridges. And they wouldn't even let us in the door with that recycled plastic. You know, we tried it in the 90s. It was terrible quality. It gummed up our machines. We don't even want to talk to you. So there's a whole bunch of things in recycling that you won't even anticipate. My favorite one was, as we developed this program, we had a team of people who did independent auditing of our upstream supply chain. We had a different team of people who did our downstream recycling of our auditing of our recycling vendors. Who was going to get to audit this middle of the road circular plastics plant, because they're neither upstream or downstream, right? I never found out who won that argument, but all kinds of gotchas get in the way. But you know, electronics recycling has been done for a long time, and I think you saw with the closed loop copper recycling that we've been doing and announced just this year, our engineers are chomping at the bit. We know we can do so much more. We set a goal of 30% post-consumer recycled plastic across our entire print and PC portfolio by the end of last year. I don't have the updated data to give you yet, but we're getting there. The average post-consumer recycled plastic in a notebook that you would buy that wasn't working on this is 2%. Now, we set 30% at 2025, but we've got the 75% goal by 2030. But really, we can't go there unless our customers come with us and putting these specs into procurement documents so that everybody else is competing at the same level. Pascal, did you want to add?
Well said.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, maybe one more question from the Q&A. Let's see, what kind of partnership and with whom did you make these partnerships when you realized that you were kind of stepping outside of previous business practices, your normal business circle? Did you have to, you touched on this with the recycling a little bit, but did you have to reach out to other partners that were not part of your previous ecosystem?
Well, thank you for asking that question, because this is one of my favorite things. So HP, we are a partnership. We were founded by a partnership. And our go-to-market strategy has always been to sell through partners. We have a vast network of partners globally. And 5 years ago, we decided we were going to help these partners become more sustainable themselves as businesses, because if we're going to help customers become more sustainable through the use of our products and the way they buy our products, we need this, the kind of like in the middle, the channel partner community. We needed to bring them along with us. So 5 years ago, and I was a subject matter expert on this, we launched a program called Amplify Impact. And we took our 80 years of sustainability expertise, brilliance, tips, tools, tricks, everything that we had, we put it into a web-enabled system, we tied a nice bow on it, and we give it to our channel partners for free and ask them to take it and go. And we are seeing, I'll give you an example, more than 6,000 sustainability courses have been taken by our partners' employees since we launched this program in Canada alone. We won a Clean 50 award for this project last year. It is very exciting to see partners stepping up. The improvement in their self-assessment scores year over year is staggering, and they're starting to see it as a business advantage too. So we track how many business deals they're making with sustainability as part of that, and it's steadily increasing too. So sustainability is a team sport. Everybody needs to be involved. So it's awesome that we've been able to invest in that.
Pascal, do you agree? Any last words?
Yeah, well, I will say that our partners are, when I consider my channels, like who sell on behalf of HP, they have come to us to say, can you provide a managed device service, SKUs and support for us to sell? So that's usually a good indication, because we do a lot of business through our channel, that they're actually coming to us and saying, you know, and I'm like, well, right now I do direct, but you know, we're looking at how we can help with the need. So it looks like there is more demand.
Right. Okay, we're just about at the top of the hour. If we were in person, we would give you a warm round of applause. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences and thoughts. It's really important to hear about how you've dealt with challenges, you've brought new ideas, to see them implemented, to encourage us to reflect on our own practices. And hopefully people will come to you with further questions about bringing these ideas into practice in their own industries. And researchers too can also be inspired by this and think about ways to actually measure these circularity indices differently and help designers close the loop, et cetera. There's a lot of work to be done, and it is a team sport. So thank you for underlining that idea, Frances. I will mention, thank you, moderators in the chat, a few more events coming up from the RRECQ, including the symposium the week of May 11th. So we appreciate everyone's attendance. We welcome questions offline, and we hope everyone has a wonderful day. Bonne journée à tout le monde. Et à la prochaine. Merci. Thank you very much.